I'd like to call to order the Peabody Planning Board meeting agenda for Thursday, December 1st, 2022 at 7 p.m. Peabody City Hall, Wigan Auditorium. I'd like at this time to suspend the regular meeting and enter into the public hearings. First public hearing on the agenda is definitive subdivision Westwood Ave, which was continued from the October 20th, 2022 meeting. Action continued to January 15, 2023. The second public hearing on the agenda is notice is hereby given that the City of Peabody Planning Board will conduct a public hearing on Thursday evening, December 1st, 2022 at 7 p.m. in the Wigan Auditorium, City Hall, 24 Lowell Street, Peabody, Mass. And also via Zoom in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 48, Section 5 of Massachusetts General Laws to consider amending the zoning ordinance of the City of Peabody as follows. Be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Peabody as follows, that the zoning amendment of the City of Peabody entitled Zoning Ordinance 2011 as amended is hereby further amended as follows. Section 1, by amending Section 4.2.5 Business under Schedule of Use Regulation by adding as a matter of right in a light industrial zone, that's IL zoning district, theater and public hall. Section 2, all ordinances or part of ordinances inconsistent herewith are hereby repealed. Section 3, this ordinance will take effect as provided by law. This was advertised in the Weekly News November 17th and November 24th. Mr. Kelty.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is John Kelty. I'm an attorney. I practice law at 40 Lowell Street here in Peabody, Massachusetts, and I appear on behalf of Pulaski Acquisition, LLC, who are the owners of the largest building in the IL zone located off of Pulaski Street here in Peabody, Mass. My client has entered into an agreement, that is Mr. Ray Felidi has entered as Pulaski Acquisition, has entered into a lease agreement with Casa Bella Venue, LLC. They are located in Boston, Massachusetts. They principally operate today out of two venues, two areas, one in Stoneham, the other in Boston. And they would like to rent 12,500 square feet of space in the building at 23 Old County Road. And toward that end, I reviewed the zoning ordinance of the City of Peabody, and they cannot do an event venue such as we see down in Peabody Square, Oleo. My client would like to develop such a venue that is Casa Bella Venue, LLC, and they would operate here in Peabody, Mass. As their sole venue at that point for weddings, corporate events, any kind of activity that a gathering would be necessary for. I've had a discussion with the Community Development Department, and one of the issues is I did go through the zoning ordinance and noted that we do have theater and public halls that are allowed uses by special permit or by right in other zoning districts. However, they are not, it is a prohibited use currently in the IL zone. So my effort is to bring that use, which is an allowed use here on our table of uses, and bring that to the IL zone and make it available there. It was pointed out to me that the two terms, we're saying public hall and theater. The reason that I chose to use those terms were they are contained in our zoning ordinance, and that is a use that is recognized in our zoning ordinance. So Andrew thought it might be helpful if we defined public hall and theater and among the recommendations you could make would be twofold. One would be if you wanted to, at the same time, recommend to the City Council that they adopt definitions. I can share these with you. I have 10 copies, which is enough for everybody, and I have one for myself. So.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to receive a handout from Attorney Kelty with the definition of the term public hall and theater.
We have a second on that?
So those definitions.
Dr. Otto?
Oh.
Aye.
Those definitions, the first, the public hall, was found in a model zoning code, which we were able to find online. And the second one, the theater, is defined, that was lifted actually from the City of Peabody, I'm sorry, City of Boston zoning code. So they seem to be usable. They seem to explain what the uses are. If the board wants to make a recommendation, it could include adopting definitions. If you'd like those definitions refined, that's something certainly that you as a board could ask the community development department to work on, or if we wanted to make changes tonight, we could do that. And I think it's important to note that a public hall, in this definition that we got, that the public hall specifically says we do not include a private club, fraternal organization, theater, a school, or a church. And then we further defined the theater. And part of the reason is, I think that in terms of, from this standpoint, of my standpoint tonight, trying to create event venue, we are able to distinguish that a public hall is not a church. It's not. Those organizations quite often have gatherings that may be the equivalent in size to something that might be had in a newly created venue. But at the end of the day, we do want to be aware that theaters, that a public hall should be distinguished from a school, church, private club, or fraternal organization. I'm happy to answer questions that you may have. The space that we're speaking specifically of is at 23 Old County Road. It is a space that is 12,500 square feet, so that the board is aware. I did cover that in my cover letter. I did say that that's where we were talking about. However, so as to avoid suggestion of spot zoning, I thought we should make it available in all of the IL zoning districts. The board could recommend that it be limited to certain IL zoning districts and identify those as a recommendation to the City Council. I'm happy to answer questions you may have.
Well, at this time, was there anyone here or on Zoom that wishes to speak in favor of this amendment? Hearing none, is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Hearing none. Now I'll accept any questions from the board. Mr. Otto?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Attorney Kelty. Are the houses on Pulaski Street the closest residential properties to this property?
Actually, houses at the end of North Central Street would be physically closer. The very last house on, the very last lot on Pulaski, or North Central Street is used as a commercial space. It used to be Brian Lynch's, and now it's the Marinos. But those would be the closest, and the other closest houses would be those on the left-hand side going down towards Danvers. Those would be the closest to us, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Thank you. So through the chair, I guess, I don't have per se questions for the applicant. I more would like to get into perhaps discussion amongst the members of the board here. So I do agree that the closest home is going to be on that North Central Street. There's no doubt about it. Then there are homes that are actually down off of Esquire Drive and Sabino Farm Road that are closer than the homes on Pulaski to this particular building. Now, this is a huge building, and the applicant did not exactly mention what corner of the building they intend on putting this in. So it's such a massive building that might be something to talk about.
I think I could address that. I believe the 12,500 square feet is the entire second floor.
I see. Yep. So that's the old Ivory Systems building. That's the old.
Make plastic bags or something there
Yeah. Okay.
after the Ivory System.
So just a few things. So was this advertised to an official abutters list?
No, because this is for a general IL zone throughout the city. It's
Excuse
not just
me?
it's for the general IL zone throughout the city. It's not him not looking for a specific location. It's the whole IL district. So it was advertised in the newspaper, though.
Provisions with respect to zone changes require that if you're doing an individual piece of property and that those butters, if you're asking that we change or amend the zoning district, there is no need to do butters.
Well, I could see how it could become cumbersome, but I'll bet that there's a bunch of people that don't feel that way, that know nothing about this, and that live near industrial, light industrial, that are going to be able to then someday, if this gets approved, put in a theater or a public hall. But, so I know that area very, very well. I spend 2-3 hours a day there for the last year and a half, going there 4 or 5 times a day. So it's not well lit. There's no sidewalks. There's a very large trucking facility, electrical and plumbing supply houses, which might be a moot point because I've got to imagine that this activity would probably be weekends and nights predominantly, unless you tried to get a daytime meeting for some commercial client.
I think you're correct with respect to certain planned events such as weddings, anniversaries, celebrations, birthdays, that kind of thing. You'd probably get them all on the weekend, but I do agree that the possibility exists for things like corporate events and the like.
Yeah, parking's not the greatest down there. So, and the other thing, I guess, in general, is that, so I'm pretty sure that the IL zoning in Peabody is the most liberal zoning we have, right? The highest impact type uses go in light industrial. Is that to Drew, is that a fair assessment? Okay, well, and then on the other end of the spectrum, I would put R1, right? That's the most restrictive. So, it just seems like letting something like this in an industrial zone, in essence, dilutes the heavier nature, the impact nature of IL. So that's about all I have to say. And I don't know if anyone else wants to chime in.
Through the chair. Jack, you mentioned the definition of public hall and theater, probably need tweaking. I agree with that. I mean, I'm reading the definition of public hall, and it says, for the purpose of any meeting or any entertainment. I mean, you put the word any in there, that kind of scares me. Any entertainment, I mean, does that mean adult entertainment can go in there? I'm being facetious a little bit there, but I mean, it's not, I just don't feel comfortable with the word any, if this is going to be part of the zoning written change. So I think that needs to be tweaked, where it doesn't say any, and maybe you need to be a little more specific, whoever is drawing up this and moving further with this. What do you think?
No objection to, trying to rework this with the assistance of the Community Development Department to try to get. One thing that might also address many of your concerns because of that question, you could, and I always do this, I always ask for things to be by right, because if I get your zone change and it's by right, then we're finished. We can open, with the appropriate permits. If I ask that it be done by special permit, it's another layer. And I always have clients who say to me, what did you do it that way for? Now we've got to go another 2 months. But I do think that in terms of what I think is the concern of Dr. Otto and Roy and probably many of the members, that if you were to adopt it, you could say by special permit, then the council would have the opportunity to scrutinize every application.
Just to follow up, yeah, I'm not looking to make things more difficult or that everything has to be special permit. It's just a little scary when it says any, because, you can get some crazy kind of entertainment in there that they say, hey, I have a right to do that, So I just think it needs to be still in a general sense, but a little more specific than any, that's all.
I just want to follow up on what Roy said. His concerns about people not being notified of this change, and even before Jack mentioned thinking about this more in terms of a special permit, I thought about it, because that would then provide a means for people whose properties were going to be affected by a particular location to be notified and have an opportunity to appear. And although there would be another layer for the developer, I think, kind of the best of both worlds, because parties with a as of right change, that people wouldn't have, any ability to challenge or to be heard on a theater or a venue coming in close to their home. So I would be in favor of recommending that if the zone change does take place, that it be by special permit and not a matter of right.
Just to follow up at what's been said as well, I would say that I believe that the planning board, rather than recommend approval or recommendation that the city council approve this, I am a little hesitant on this definition, as I'd like to have our city solicitor take a look at it, because I want to know what the overall what results could come of this for other parcels already in the city with their zoning, if this makes any issues for things that are already zoned a certain way, and if this now kind of makes it open a little bit. So I'd want our council to look at that before moving forward. I also just want to point out that IL is not only on Pulaski Street. There's also districts of IL in downtown off of Burney Street and Winter Street, the western end-ish of Oak, and then off of no, I can't speak, I can't think, off of Washington Street, and as well also off of, sorry, there's some also off of Walnut Street and Webster Street. The idea of having a special permit would allow abutters to be notified. It would also allow that departments would be notified of different change of uses, in which then they could provide comments for such things as well. But I did just want to point that out.
What would be the parking requirements applied to a use like this?
Be there, you probably would need to make a recommendation that the portion of IL, because IL is based, currently is based on square footage of your building. If we were to do it that way, I guess, you know, it would work, but you may not be able to, you know, you're probably going to want it on a different square footage than purely the building. Maybe the square footage that would be devoted to the gathering or some such thing. So define parking?
It is defined in our parking regulations. It is for theater, public hall, and auditorium, 1 parking space for each 5 seats or for each 100 square feet of auditorium area if there are not fixed seats, and then 1 parking space, sorry, that is, you gotta scroll up here. That was the minimum. The maximum is 1 parking space for each 4 seats or for each 50 square feet of auditorium area if there are no fixed seats.
To further that discussion, so our parking section now lists uses, and we don't necessarily need, we look at that table. I was thinking more in terms of there's a specific square footage, parking needed for the square footage of the building, but if we've already got it defined, then.
I'll also mention, so there was no, and I don't know, Jack, if you also searched, but I could not find a definition for theater or public hall within the city and how it's defined. Yeah, but if you do review our zoning language and our ordinances, this has clearly been something that has been thought out because there is different rules and regulations regarding and referencing theater and public halls, such as Section 525 of our Code of Ordinance. You know, chief of police have access to public dance halls and dances at all times. There's also other sections in there that refer to public halls in regards to, I don't think that actually counts, but there is other areas in the city Code of Ordinances and zoning ordinance that refers to public halls and theaters.
How many dance halls do we have?
Could parking spaces be triggered by capacity or capacity for an event? I know if you have a wedding, it's probably 2 people arriving per automobile.
The ordinance gives a sliding scale in a sense of like number of tables, number of seating.
I believe that referenced 5 seats and 4 seats.
I think that's what he read, yeah. What do you want to do?
I'm just throwing this out there. I know if I had a movie theater with 1,000 seats, I would need parking for at least 500 vehicles.
There is in our Code of Ordinances, refers to many different things such as hours. I think there comes down to like police when it comes to public halls and public dances that are happening as well. But I think this is, again, one of those things where this zoning is being, you know, Jack is coming, or Attorney Kelty is coming in front of the board with something for a specific lot, but there is many other lots in the city as well that we also need to take into account for with this. But I think the parking is a good point because some of these areas, not a lot of parking to begin with.
And getting back to police, is there a detail required for 20 people, 50 people?
That I would have to look into further.
At least it used to be like 100 people, because I remember AOH, many of the Elks, they would need details for their weddings because their hall was bigger, and then the AOH would always say they couldn't fit that many people, they didn't have to have the details. So I believe the detail is triggered by the number of people at the event.
So, Jack, the applicant, am I understanding this correct, that the only way that this applicant can utilize this 12,000 square feet is to get a blanket change of zoning in the IL for the whole city? There's no other way for them to achieve what they're looking for other than changing the zoning for the entire city and the light industrial? I mean, is there can they get a special permit? Can zoning be, I guess it can't be modified in any way because it has to be modified for the whole city. But is there any other alternative rather than changing everything? Because I agree with Roy. I mean, when you have all these residential abutters nowadays that are, abutting against, the light industrial districts where you're going to have theater and you're going to have, bands playing and, till 10 or 11 at night and so forth and so on, that they're not notified in advance to give their opinion through an abutters list notification. Again, my question is, does the applicant have any other alternative to achieve what they're looking for, to utilize this property for, other than changing the zoning for the entire city and the light industrial?
Yes and no. I think the straightforward answer is no, because we would be accused of spot zoning. So what I'm trying to do is say the entire city, as this would become eligible, and I guess it would seem to me we're leaning to a special permit. Fine. The other possible way that would limit it to here would be, what, a further amendment to the mill overlay? Yeah.
I guess your question is twofold, though, that we have fulfilled the Massachusetts general law about notification, that we have advertised this and we have put it in a place of public notice and everything for this public hearing. I think that to that point, like, there's not much else we can do. But to the point about notifying people, if this was to pass, that something like a theater or public hall, any of those entertainment types were to be coming into their district that abuts them, then that's where a special permit, you could recommend to the city council that this be approved with the condition that it's by special permit. Because right now it's by right, in which case you wouldn't have to notify anyone if you wanted to change a use back there.
Well, it's not by right because it's a zoning issue, right? But what you're saying is that they can move forward on
My
a special
amendment
permit?
says that it should be by right.
I understand that,
Right.
but if we don't agree with this,
Right.
you can move forward on a special permit? Oh, I thought that's what you
No,
just said.
I'm saying that yes. I'm saying that the planning board could recommend that the city council approve it with special permit, rather than approving this zoning change as by right.
Right.
And that special permit would be citywide?
It would be,
In
if
other
you
words,
try to
whether
do a
it's them
theater,
or someone on Walnut Street that applies
well,
for
if
it.
you
Everything-
change the use for IL, then yes, in all IL districts
Right.
that somebody wants to do a theater or public hall, then you would have to file a special permit.
Got it.
Just one more thing. So basically, I understand what you're saying, that this satisfies the Mass General laws of notification. But let's not be naive here, okay? That this could have the possibility to affect 50, 100 to 200 or more residences. So Yeah, I get it. It meets the letter of the law, but put yourself in one of those residences' seats and don't not believe that they're not going to be coming in here all guns blazing with their emotions when somebody wants to stick a theater or it's not a nightclub, but wedding venues or whatever, 100 feet from their homes. Just to clarify something too, no matter what form this thing takes, its next stop is City Council. That's correct. Right.
Hearing is next Thursday.
Right. So I would vote to approve this if we amend it for special permit.
Any other questions from the board? At this time, we're going to accept the motion.
Well, sorry, just to clarify, we do have this definition in front of us. I would recommend that the planning board not recommend approval of this definition until it has been vetted and reviewed by city departments and staff.
Could the planning board recommend by special permit and recommend further work on the definitions so that at least, and then maybe between now and whenever the...
That's what I figured. I just don't think that the planning board should give their approval to this definition as it is written.
No, I don't think anybody said that. I was going to, yeah.
Just to make it clear so that we recommend approval of special permit, also state that I think that this definition needs to be vetted as well.
Drew, is us?
Through the chair, Tom? Drew, can you just explain if we amended and approved via special permit, can you just explain the process that an applicant would go through, just for clarification's sake, beyond, like if we were to recommend this and city council were to adopt whatever we recommend, what then is the process for getting granted that special permit?
So general theater decides to move into, I don't know, this building, you would have to file a special permit application with the city council. You'd pay that fee. You would have to then pay for an advertisement in a newspaper for 2 consecutive weeks. You would then have to also identify and notify abutters within 100 feet, or is it 300 feet? 100 feet of that property. It would, or 300 feet of that property. You would then have a public hearing on that, at which point it would be set. It's usually like you file the application, I believe it's like a month later is usually when the public hearing would happen. And then that's when you would come in front of the city council and you would plead your case. It also, when a special permit request is filed, triggers departmental review by city hall departments as well. So every single city hall department gets the application, is able to provide comments. They can either say they're for, against, provide recommendations as well.
Okay, thank you. So I suppose I'm in the same camp. I would not be in favor of approving what was presented originally here tonight. I like Roy's suggestion if we were to move forward with anything as well.
Through the chair. Drew, I think you said that there is no definition in the Peabody zoning ordinance of either theater or public hall.
But the use is recognized, and then the use is carried through parking, but the use itself is not defined, so.
Yeah, I'm just having a little bit of a logistical issue or a procedural issue in adopting a definition or recommending that there be a definition adopted, but not engrafting that into the section of the zoning ordinance which defines things.
This almost seems very similar to what happened with Attorney Kelty in a previous zoning amendment it was, correct me if I know it was for a spaghetti place, but you had mentioned food processing, and that was kind of the same issue, is that what did food processing entail? And then I believe the planning board recommended that, approval based upon definition your food processing be defined.
But my question is, where does this definition appear ultimately in the zoning ordinance?
I believe it would just appear in the definition section, so now it would be clearly defined.
So
Theater, public hall.
Does that then require another amendment to be put before us? To
No.
amend the definition section?
No,
No? Okay.
it will not.
That was my issue, whether there was procedural basis for going forward and creating a definition without amending the zoning ordinance. Thank you.
I wouldn't be in favor of us writing the definition either. I mean, there must be some sort of state-defined definition of a public hall or theater that must exist in some other municipality or in the Commonwealth.
Well, in my experience doing what I do, in interpretation of laws and ordinances, if the law itself or the ordinance itself doesn't define the thing we're talking about, then the plain and ordinary meaning is what determines, what it is, and that's Webster's dictionary.
Just to add to that, in this instance, we took the public hall definition out of a model zoning code, looking online, and we saw that that's how theater was defined. And then the second, how public hall was defined. And then the theater came directly from the Boston ordinance, so.
I will say that, as Attorney Kelty mentioned, community development does not have much issue with this zoning amendment. The only concern would be that, it's not only one section. This would now be allowed in all sections that are IL and some section. All sections are not equal, that some have more land, some have tighter areas than others. I was simply just concerned about what exactly is a public hall, what exactly is a theater, because some abutters are much closer than other abutters, residential specifically.
I think you could advise the department, the Community Development Department, in your recommendation by special permit and to provide a definition and have the Community Development Department with Attorney Kelty provide that definition to the City Council.
Which would be agreeable to work with Attorney Kelty on defining this. I also my one other concern with this definition is that I would just like our city solicitor to review it just to make sure that it works and cohesive with other zoning areas in the city as well.
Mr. Chairman, and just to say again that, in the definition section, it's like, I just have a problem with any kind of entertainment. I just think that that's, it kind of freaks me out a little bit what that means. So that would need to be defined somehow through cooperation with the planning department.
Just to add a little bit to that, in regards to your original point about does that include adult entertainment? There's certain, though, and I would actually refer this to the city solicitor, but with this trump, because there's already defined what an adult use is, and there are certain regulation and rules that cover adult uses that require it to be in certain areas, certain setbacks, certain different regulations that are involved with that as well.
Does that answer your question? It's already defined adult entertainment? At this time, I would accept a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to recommend the City Council adopt a zoning change to the IL district allowing theater in public halls. Further, I would recommend to consider by special permit, not by right. Further, I would recommend that the council and community development refine and clarify the definitions of theater and public hall. So moved.
Do we have a second on that?
And entertainment on the definitions.
Second.
Ioannidis,
Yes.
Mr. Simos,
Yes.
Mr. Gagnon,
Yes.
Mr. Ford,
Yes.
Mr. Feld,
Yes.
Mr. Genzali,
Yes.
Dr. Otto? Yes. Mr. Perlman
Yes.
and Mr. Betancourt.
Yes. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. This time, I'd like to return to the agenda for the regular meeting of the City Planning Board. First item is the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting.
Just see that for a second.
Sure.
I got it.
They're just currently being worked on at the moment. They'll be available for the next meeting.
Next item is site building permit plan, 190R Newbury Street, map 35, lot 38A.
There is no new material which has come from the Department of Public Services. I would respectfully request that this matter be continued. I've been advised that there is no second meeting this month. Your next meeting will be 1/5. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I would continue this matter to 1/12, so that gives you the week after.
Motion to accept?
Move to accept the request for an extension of time on 190R Newbury Street.
We have a second.
Second.
Dr. Otto, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Item on the agenda is 55 Pulaski Street, map 53, lot 029. This matter was continued from the 11/17/22 meeting.
Matter, I would also, there is no new material to be shared. I did give you a letter, but that letter short-sheeted you, and I would amend that letter by saying I would extend this till January 12th as well. Sure. Then I would respectfully and humbly ask for a continuance of this matter to your meeting of, well, I would give the extension to January 12th, which will be 1 week following your meeting, 2023.
Mr. Chairman, in the matter of 55 Pulaski Street, I would move to accept Attorney Kelty's request for an extension of time until January 12th of 2023.
Second. Aye.
I will mention in regards to 55 Pulaski Street, we did receive quite a bit of information from that, from the project from Mr. Mello. That will be forthcoming in your next planning board agenda. While you are here, though, Attorney Kelty, I've reached out to Mr. Mello about providing hard copies of the items. Are we going to be receiving those prior to the meeting?
Chris did indicate to me he didn't necessarily want to print all those until we saw if there were any changes being made by the last request that our peer reviewer, I talked to the peer reviewer today. There will be no changes. There's going to be a note added to her recommendations. And so I'll get those copies to you.
Next item on the agenda is appointments. There is none. Section E, subdivision board action has been continued to January 15th, 2023 on Westwood Ave. Correspondence, regional notices, any questions on them?
Mr. Chairman, I just have a quick question on Westford Ave. On the peer review, was there a traffic study involved in the peer reviews?
I do not believe so. I can double check with that exactly, though.
I think that's something that should be looked at. Thank you.
Other matters properly before the board is fee revision. In your packet, I believe you have which you requested in your last meeting, a breakdown of other cities and fees. And any questions on this from the board?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, just really quickly, in your packets, everyone should have received this broken down schedule of fees. I did it just for site plan review at the moment, but I did break down of what the Form A definitive subdivision and then what our building permit fees are as well. A couple questions were posed at the last meeting just to answer those. One of which was, where does the planning board money go? The planning board money goes back into the city general fund, but then that money is then used to be allocated for the planning board agenda. I mean, it also pays for our positions as well, myself, Michelle, and which helps directly function with the planning board. The other question was about building permits. You know, do these other cities and towns have different building permits compared to what we have? No, it's pretty similar throughout the board on what building permit fees are as well. Just to how to read this plan, I put down two options. Those options are, I think I had mentioned last time, a base fee with then that everybody was to be paid, which would be the same amount with then a certain amount over, or a certain amount per square footage over another amount of square footage. Second option would be base fee to be paid by or per the amount of square footage proposed with a minimum amount. Both would also have a maximum amount as well. Then broke it down by what an example of this could be. Site plan fee option number one would be a $500 base fee with then $250 per 5,000 square feet over 5,000 square feet. I've then provided two examples of what this would look like for what I would consider a medium-sized, development, 8,700 square feet, compared to a large-scale development at 183,000 square feet, just to show you a lot of. And then at the bottom there, I broke it down by what municipalities around us. I try to pick, Danvers, Salem, Beverly, our neighbors, but then I picked Lowell, another sizable city like the city of Peabody as well, and what they choose. I'm just looking for discussion from the board and whatever they may. These numbers don't need to be exact. They don't need to be 500. They could be whatever the board wants. We can discuss changes to it. We can discuss further information on it. But I think this is something that we need to probably start looking at moving, towards as we move into this new year.
Would something of this nature, would it be apropos to have a separate subcommittee of board members to review this with the city? We did that. Dr. Otto had a special committee for the rules and regulations. I think this would be a good thing to have.
We could. I mean, you could, or the board can just discuss it and vote, either one.
I was going to make the same suggestion. We should probably sit down in a conference room with all our material and just hammer it out.
Well, I mean, it seems like this could go on for a while. The number one thing I agree with Drew completely, that all the other stuff seems to be in decent shape, and this one single line item seems to be inordinately low. And I guess I'm okay with the subcommittee. I just think that it's going to take some time. But I myself kind of like the simplicity of the way the Lowell does it, because it's nice and simple, and it's by 1,000 square foot blocks. You put that 500 on the front end, so every single application, no matter how big or how small, gets a $500 number. It's 5 times more than it is now. Seems a lot more appropriate. and then it's quite simple to come up with this. So that's just my recommendation. And I hit a few, I just did a few target numbers. If you had a 100,000 square foot building, it'd be an $8,000 fee. I guess what I was kind of contemplating is that it doesn't take 20 times more work, and it probably shouldn't cost 20 times more dollars to approve a project that's 20 times bigger. So they have what appears to be a decent max of 10,000. So if you run the max, that ends up at 127,000 square foot building with the way that Lowell does it, 500, and that hits your max. A 25,000 square foot building, the fee would be $23.75. So whatever the board wants to do. If you want to do a subcommittee, I'd like to be put on it.
I will also say that I am in favor of a base fee with then a certain amount per square footage. Plus that, I think that's an option that is equitable, and I think that it works in terms of simplicity. I think it also stays, depending on what the number, I think it really comes down to the planning board. I think there's really only a few options on what a fee schedule could be. Do you do just a simple straight fee like we have now, or do you do something as Roy just mentioned, Lowell does? And then it just comes down to the planning board agreeing on what those numbers are. Just some things to keep in mind is that, not every development is a large corporation. Some of these are some smaller businesses too. So we want to make sure that whatever amount we choose, is still a business friendly and, amount as well.
I have to admit, I don't know anything of fees. We don't see fees here. What would a filing fee be for a subdivision currently?
It's $750 base fee and then $750 per lot.
So there's something that clearly needs adjustment. Some of these subdivisions are millions of dollars, so I could see a $5,000 fee and $900 per lot added to that. So just my thoughts. So again, I have no knowledge of fees. We never deal with fees or money. In the inspections, building inspector stuff, how do we're in charge of that too?
It's on there about I put it on there. If you look at the sheet, it's got what the City of Peabody building permits are. But I mean, it's all various. I mean, actually, Matt, you might be able to help me out more than what goes into a building permit fee and it all comes down to it. But a majority of building permit fees is a certain amount of money per square footage, or for some, it's a certain percentage of square footage or of total cost of the project as well.
Yeah, I think anywhere from $10 to $24 per thousand is the kind of standard commercial building permit rate in the state. I know Saugus is the highest I've heard at 24. I think maybe Newton might be that high. And then Peabody's at 20, and then the rest, kind of go down from there. As you see here, it's 10 for Lowell, 14 for Danvers. Usually there's another certificate of occupancy fee at the end, which isn't very much. It's usually like $100. And then sometimes fire departments charge maybe a review fee, somewhere from $100 to $250.
I was just looking for this type of discussion to begin on this. I don't think this is going to be like a 2-year thing. I was thinking this could probably be wrapped up hopefully in a couple meetings. But I guess like my point to the planning board would be using this, I think at the last meeting it was kind of maybe hit some people off guard, so they had a lot of questions. I think now that a lot of these questions have maybe been answered, now it's when we start discussing. I think Roy, I don't know what the board thought, but I think Roy makes a great point. I think that the more simple you keep it, you have a max, you have a minimum amount, it's pretty equitable, and then it comes down to the planning board deciding is that the structure that we want. And I mean, there's really two answers that need to be given. What's the structure of the fee and how much is the fee? And then I think there's little things in there as well, because if you do such as the one that Lowell does, what if you come in with an 8,999 proposed square foot building? You know, did you go over 500, you round up, and 499, you round down. So there's little other nuisance things as well. That being said, I can see a lot of projects coming in at 8,999 square feet plus minus, you know, coupled in there as well.
You just put a thought in my head, Drew, is you need to be very specific with, is the project, are you talking about in square feet? Are you talking about the size of the lot? Or are you talking about the size of the building? Okay, right. Well, that would have to be specifically spelled out.
It's down to, I liked Roy's idea because it keeps it simple, because sometimes they get it down to, you know, gross buildable area, or, you know, I think you're right that some of these things do need to be defined specifically, in that, like, does it count an overhang area? Does it count, you know, what is exactly was counted when you do this fee?
Keep in mind, too, that just walking in and you want to build a 1 square foot building, you're paying $500. I know I'm being facetious. Nobody's going to build a 1 square foot building. But you walk in the door, you're paying 5 times more than you've been paying for the last decade, right? So you're already way ahead before you add, and then just do it in 1,000 square foot blocks. Boom, 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 boom. Nice and simple. And you don't have to be playing with the 499 goes down, 501 goes up. Just a suggestion. So in other words, the $500 carries you all the way to 1,000 feet.
Anybody have any ideas of how we want to discuss this, meeting to meeting, or my suggestion of a subcommittee? Would that be more relevant?
Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to sit on a subcommittee. I think that might be the best way to do it, to brainstorm some of the board members together.
If that's the case, I'll accept someone to lead the subcommittee. Anyone want to volunteer for that?
I'll sit on the subcommittee.
So we have 3. Does anyone want to be the head of the committee?
Why you do, Mr. Chairman?
We have, how many members would like to join that subcommittee? We have
I'll join.
4. All right. And you guys can decide beside yourself when you will meet and come back with a recommendation to the board. Thank you. All right. Any other matters properly before the board?
Just a reminder, this is our last meeting for December. We will see everybody again in January.
Do we need to accept this agenda?
No, that's the next.
Oh, was that on the agenda too? I totally forgot. Yes, sorry.
No, that planning board calendar, you don't have to accept that. I mean, it's automatic.
I thought we vote to approve the dates, no?
Well, it's always the,
It's in the,
it's
in the
thing for
bylaw.
second and 2 Thursdays.
First and third Thursday of every month.
Yeah, so it's automatically in our rules and regulations that that's what it is. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't need to be accepted.
So just wanted to mention something that I heard about that, and I don't know if it's totally true. It seems like it shouldn't be true, but I'm wondering if the planning department has heard anything about, so off of Catherine Drive in Linfield, there's a proposal to put 150 units of, I believe, 55-plus housing. And somebody told me that the town of Linfield Planning Department, I guess, or somebody, feels that all those residences on that side of Catherine Drive, so in that section, every backyard of every home that abuts this property is the town line between Linfield and Peabody, and that they won't be accepting any public commentary from anybody living in Peabody. Have you heard anything like that?
I knew that the golf course had been looking at developing homes back there. I guess I didn't know that it was moving forwards as quickly as it is. I thought it was still an idea, but no, I had not heard anything about that.
I don't know that these are homes per se. I believe they're duplexes, but I'm not 100% sure. And I know there was some talk about maybe having Peabody water and sewer, which I hear is not happening, which is wonderful, because we don't seem to have enough water for ourselves this past summer. But I just remember sitting here and letting citizens who live in Linfield speak about when we were talking about the marijuana and how we let them speak and let them vent. And it goes both ways, folks.
Just, they have a different form of town government over there. It's by town meeting, and you got to be a resident of the town to participate in their meeting. I've seen it in action. They won't let an outsider speak. So that's their form of government.
Well, maybe we need to adopt that policy when we're working with a butters in Linfield and let them speak.
Seems like they wanted to build a quite large development. It's now been scaled down and that they're in talks with the town planning staff. Linfield. As of September, I will reach out to the town of Linfield planning department and inquire.
Any other matters before the board?
Mr. Chairman, move to adjourn.
We have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. I hope to see you all on the 13th, and have a wonderful Christmas.